Good evening. It's time for the Gilded Age, episode 6. Heads have rolled for less. Last week was very difficult. I saw a side of Tom Rakes that made me very uncomfortable. It was a major red flag, and most opinions I saw online agreed, which makes me very upset. I don't think too many people are rooting for him at this point, and it makes me sad because I was so gung-ho about he and Marian as a couple at first, and now I'm having doubts about his character. I've seen some people who are saying they think he might even be taking advantage of her, potentially lying that her father left her no money. He told her that all her father's railroad investments were a fail and that he had left behind nothing. I saw some tweets that said it's hard to believe in this time period when railroads are booming that none of his investments worked out. Now, that may not be true, that may not come to pass, but now that I'm having doubts about him, I'm like, oh no, what if he's an even worse person than what I saw last week? I want him to be redeemed, but at this point, him being a bad person seems inevitable. I don't know. Okay, I just gotta suck it up. Play the episode. Okay, here we go. Oh no. Look at this. This is the Russell's train. Crashed.
Is there anything else we can do?
Not at this stage.
Don't get mad at me. Oh no.
I only wish we could have gotten here sooner. Is there anything else we can do?
Not at this stage. You have a list of the passengers in the hospital.
And another of the dead.
5 victims is tragic, of course. But no women and no children, thank God. It might have been much worse.
Peggy, why didn't you tell me you were coming? I need an invitation.
Got my Starbucks. Also, trying egg bites for the first time. That's good. A lot of notes to get through. Warning you right now. We find out that 5 men died in the train crash. No women or children. It sounds horrible, but the consensus seems to be it could have been worse. It's awful because 5 people are still dead. 5 families are missing a brother, father, a son. Clara Barton from the Red Cross helped at the crash site, and she gave a quote to a newspaper which really seems to have smoothed things over. So it seems like their business and reputation is going to be fine. Their money, fine. When Agnes Van Ryn finds out about the crash in the newspaper, she blames the Russells, claiming negligence on their part. Marian once again gets defensive about the Russell family. She's in for a rude awakening. Those people are not nice. Specifically the parents. They're not good people. And she continues to defend them, and I'm not sure why. I know technically they've been nice to her. Wait until she finds out what kind of people they actually are. Just saying. Peggy and Marian seem to be doing really well, which I'm very excited about. I think they're actually taking steps forward. They discuss Tom, of course, and Peggy tells her that she likes Tom. He's a good lawyer, he's nice, but she has doubts because he doesn't seem to have a plan for the future. Now, I find this interesting because neither Marian nor Peggy seem to be concerned about his behavior at the hotel. They're not even mentioning it as inappropriate, as a red flag. I find that interesting, but Peggy does have concerns because she says it seems like he doesn't have a plan. Trust me, there's more about Tom. We'll get to that. Mrs. Morris is back. She is at the meeting for the local Red Cross women's group. They vote to let Bertha Russell in as a member, and she storms out because she blames the family for her husband's death, and she refuses to be associated with anyone in the family. The thing is, she really wants revenge, but she's in a really tough position. Bertha is really making headway and gaining friends in society. She's climbing the ladder. Mrs. Morris lost the majority of her wealth. She lost her husband. Her family lost their reputation. She's still in society, but I have a feeling most of the rich women just feel pity for her. Really, they're all about the money. Once you don't have the money, they're like, nah. They want to be seen with the people who are somebody. And Mrs. Morris is kind of a nobody now. So I'm just wondering what can be done. It feels horrible to say those things, but that's how it works, right? I don't think she's handling this well, but if I put myself in her shoes, how would I be acting if a family was so cold towards my husband that he ended up taking his own life? Obviously, the Russells didn't murder him, but they played a part in what I would call his demise. And I can understand why she has such strong feelings about it. I just don't know what she can do. But also, I don't think the Russells should let their guard down because she's an angry woman. Nathan Lane was back as Mr. McAllister. He wants to pay a visit to the Russells' New York City palace. Aurora Fane tells Bertha Russell he prefers English service. English service is basically the way you serve the food you serve, the way the silverware's laid out, the way the staff is dressed, etc. She tells her, you need to make an impression, you need to succeed, he will not give you a second chance. She is so serious, it's so dramatic. It just seems so silly, but Bertha is determined, so she'll do whatever it takes. Even if English service is not what they normally do, it's a huge upheaval with their staff, which we'll get to in a minute. Peggy's boss, Mr. Fortune, tells her that her work for the newspaper is actually increasing circulation. It's actually bringing in more customers, which is fantastic. She visits her mom. Yes, Audra McDonald is back. I was hoping she'd sing because we see her playing piano, but she doesn't. So close. But I'll take her playing piano any day of the week. I was just glad to see her. She tells her mom what happened. Her mom is so happy and proud of her. She tells her her father did read the article, but he just thinks this career is doomed to fail. She encourages her to tell him the good news. Peggy replies, no, I don't think it'll make a difference. Gosh, there's something more we don't know. Peggy and her mother are fine. They can converse. They're relatively comfortable around one another. I just feel like something more happened with the dad that we don't know about. Potentially with the relationship she was talking about in the last episode, the guy that her parents didn't approve of, and he ended up leaving her life. Peggy's just made so many comments, and she obviously has very strong feelings when it comes to her dad. I don't know. I think there's more, and I'm so curious. I just need to know the full story. So hopefully we find out more next week. We'll see. The Russells have a fight. George cares about his reputation because of the train crash. He's a businessman. He cares about that. But it seems like he also really cares that people died. I'm tentatively giving him credit for that. Bertha, on the other hand, is like, oh, yeah, we're fine. Our company's fine, our money's fine, our reputation's fine. Like, let's move on. Mr. McAllister's coming to dinner. That should be the center of our universe. And George tells her, men died on our train. Mr. McAllister does not matter. I mean, yeah, I agree with him. Good for him. Still don't like him, but good for him. Bertha looks him in the eye and is like, George, don't you dare go soft on me. You know this is all I've ever wanted. It's so superficial. He storms out, but turns around and tells her, you could never be mistaken for soft. Basically, calling her cold. He fights with his wife quite a bit about reality versus her materialistic wants. It seems so odd because really they're two sides of the same coin, but I guess it's the kinds of things they want. He's all about the money and the power. I would say, yeah, like money and power. She is all about status. She wants to be somebody when she's around other families in town. They're both standing from a place of wealth and privilege, but their wants are slightly different because of their day-to-day lives. I don't know. I still don't like them. Agnes gets very serious with Marian. She finds out that she's going to the Russells' luncheon with Mr. McAllister. She's mad about it, but honestly, she doesn't fight her as much as you might expect. She kind of just resigns herself to it. But then she tells her that Tom Rakes will be there. She doesn't get loud or aggressive. She doesn't yell at her. Marian tells her aunt, Tom's doing great. People like him because he's nice. She looked her in the eye and said something that broke my heart. She told her, eventually, he will not need you anymore. I've seen this before. Every man is the same. He will not need you anymore. Marian storms out. Ada tries to soften the situation, but I think there's something about the way Agnes said it that even Ada is considering it and cautious about it. I don't know. There's another conversation that Marian has in this episode that supports a theory I'm working on in my brain. I don't want it to be true, but I'm thinking this is headed in a bad direction. We will come back to this. The Van Ryn's butler, Bannister, meets with the Russells' butler, Church, because he is British and can help them with doing English service properly. However, what he doesn't expect is for Bertha Russell to be so desperate for everything to be perfect that she offers to pay him to be their butler on the day of the luncheon. He knows it'll be a problem, but he agrees. Y'all don't even know what drama is coming. Well, if you watch the episode, you do, but oh my goodness, just wait. Somehow, Larry Russell convinces his parents to let Gladys go to a tea party hosted by the Fish family, I believe. Mrs. Fish apparently always gets these crazy ideas in her head for parties for her daughter. This time it's a tea party, which sounds lovely, but it's a doll tea party. So everyone has to hold a doll and keep them well fed. I don't care how long you play with dolls, okay? The weird thing is that Larry Russell was invited because there's other young men there, and it's not even the fact that there's men there, it's just like there's such a mix of people, not a huge age gap. I mean, they didn't show everyone at the party, but it's just like, under the circumstances, it seemed a bit odd with the mix of people that were there, but to each his own. Also, I think Mrs. Fish makes things more uncomfortable than they need to be. That's not even the important part. Gladys hits it off with Miss Astor. They bond over their difficult mothers, and it seems like they could become really good friends. In fact, Miss Astor goes over to the Russell house. Bertha meets her, and it seems like she could actually be a good asset for convincing Bertha to loosen the reins, let Gladys be out in society, have her debutante ball, or whatever you call it. It's not all for Gladys, unfortunately. This is not motherly love. Bertha is so desperate to have a place in society that her daughter being in with Mrs. Astor's daughter, she's seeing stars in a good way. I guess if it works for Gladys, I don't think she'll necessarily care. I mean, she knows her mother. I'm not really sure how Mrs. Astor will react. That's a bridge that we haven't crossed yet. That will be interesting because Bertha is more than willing to get herself into the Astor household. Mrs. Astor has not yet been willing to accept the Russells. However, if you'll remember, after their stunt at the charity event, like episode 2 or 3, she admitted that they're a force to be reckoned with, and eventually she might associate with them. Maybe she won't be as opposed to it as we might think. We'll have to see. Next, we see Marian visit Mrs. Chamberlain. She is initially there to convince her to join their Red Cross group. It turns into a conversation about her reputation, and she tells Marian all the rumors are true. Yes, she was with a man while he was still married. She broke the rules. Marian then tells her, I'm also on the brink of breaking the rules, my aunt's rules. And then she starts to talk about Tom. This is where my theory comes into play. I'll play the scene for you, and then we'll talk about what's going on up in my head.
There's a man, respectable, hardworking, a successful attorney, in fact. But my aunts believe him to be an unworthy adventurer. He's using me to get ahead.
And you disagree.
He doesn't need me to get into society. He's already there, and I have no money. So why would he pursue me if it wasn't true?
Well, what do you plan to do?
It's so difficult. You meet for a few stolen moments in a park at the opera.
In other words, you hardly know him and your aunts are against it.
But what do they know?
A great deal about how this city works. I don't regret my choice, not for a moment, because I knew a great love. But without it, my path would have been a stony one.
How can I know if it is a great love if I'm not allowed to see him for more than a minute?
So, the specific part that stuck out to me is Marian saying, Tom doesn't need me to get ahead in society. He's doing it on his own. I have no money, no advantage to offer him. Why would he be using me? That set off alarm bells in my head. Loud alarm bells because of what everyone on social media is speculating about. Here is what I am thinking. Aunt Agnes might be more or less correct about Tom not being a good person, but he might not leave her. Picture this. Tom and Marian actually make it. She makes up her mind. They get married against the odds. And then suddenly, oh, look at that. Marian does have money. In this time, men are seen as above the women. So even though it's Marian's money, society is seeing it as the man's money. So it's Tom's money. And all of a sudden, he's a wealthy man. Now at this point, could he leave her? That's also an option. But the whole point is marrying her, becoming connected to her, and then the money comes out in the open. I really hope that's not true, but as soon as this scene played out, that is literally the first thing that popped into my head. And I am scared. The next scene is probably my favorite moment in the entire episode. Armstrong has been rude to Peggy from day one. She acts really upset in front of Agnes Van Ryn, so Agnes asks her, "What's the matter?" She tells her she has concerns about Peggy and her career as a journalist. She thinks her articles could be traced back to the Van Ryn household and cause trouble, which is so dumb. Agnes doesn't even hesitate. This is not what she says, but it's basically what she says. "Mrs. Armstrong, your racism is showing. Don't let your prejudice get in the way any longer. Stop making trouble for Peggy or I will get angry." Translation, you will be on the chopping block. You will be fired. No hesitation. This is why I say I think Agnes truly cares about Peggy. Agnes did not get to do the things she wanted to do when she was a young woman. She sees ambition in Peggy and she admires it. Ugh, just like, I loved that moment so much. Armstrong needed to be told off and put in her place, and Agnes is in a position of power to do so because she is her boss. Loved it. Bannister tells the Van Ryns a lie about needing to go speak with a lawyer about some family stuff. It's such a terrible lie, and they know he's lying. Agnes is so angry, but he's allowed to go anyway. He makes it over to the Russells' house. Church is very jealous, but he's going along with it. Everything seems to be okay. The first snag is that Marian is a guest. Bannister didn't know that. Marian is surprised to see him, but she's cool. You know, she doesn't really care, so she's like, "I'm guessing my aunts don't know. Don't worry, I won't say anything." Tom Rix is there. This is the one and only scene that we see him in. He's fine. He's his old self. He's nice. He tells Marian he wants to see more of her. It's fine. Everything is fine. If last week hadn't happened, I'd be more excited. But I can't lie. It's changed everything. I didn't even feel anything when he appeared. I felt nothing. Marian is obviously so infatuated. I really want to believe it was a fluke last week and the red flags aren't there. They're not real. But I just have this sinking feeling. I don't want it to be real. I want this to be a dream. We'll see, but I'll be honest, it doesn't feel the same anymore. Back at the Van Ryn household, young Jack is doing his best to fill in as butler, but he's nervous. Ada is trying to be very encouraging. Agnes is just very angry. She is so mad at Bannister. She knows something is going on. And then somebody sends her a letter telling her where Bannister is. I don't know who did that, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was Turner, because she is determined to turn that household upside down. Agnes is livid. And guess what she does next? She storms across the street into the Russell home, into the dining room, and everyone turns to look at her. And it's so awkward. And then Marian and Aurora do their best to smooth things over. "Oh, Aunt Agnes, she must be here to say hello to Mr. McAllister." It seems like Agnes might blow up, but I think she realizes that she's causing a scene, and she slowly brings it down, apologizes, and takes her leave. There isn't any more drama. Everything's fine. Thankfully, Marian and Aurora were really nice about it. I feel bad for Agnes because she obviously overreacted. I'm sure deep down she's embarrassed. But I feel even worse for Bannister because now she is not speaking to him. That's interesting. I don't know if this leads to him becoming the Russells' butler. That is a possibility. If Mr. McAllister likes them, he might be coming over more often, which means they'll have to do this English service thing all the time. Their butler Church doesn't know how to do any of that. He's not experienced with it. They might shell out the money to hire Bannister. which would piss off Agnes even more. If she continues to not speak to him and make it more uncomfortable, might push him out the door, but we'll see. Next, Oscar and Turner meet up. She gives him information. He pays her not really anything we haven't heard before. She tells him about some of the train crash details. She does let him know that even though Bertha is the queen of the household, he should work on George Russell because Gladys is his baby girl. If he wants to marry Gladys, he's going to have to impress the dad. When the whole thing happened between George Russell and Mr. Morris, Oscar stepped away from the Russell family. He didn't necessarily take Mr. Morris's side, but he believed the rumors that George could lose everything. Now, he still has this plan in his mind that he wants to marry Gladys. He wants to get back into their house, but he has to sort of smooth things over. And George is already suspicious about him. Also, Turner doesn't know specifics, but she knows there's more to the train crash story. What she doesn't know is that the reason the train crashed is because old parts were used. George Russell hires a Pinkerton, a really good detective, to investigate. It seems like he really didn't know that sort of practice was going on, but if that got out, it would be a huge scandal that could shut him down for good. If Turner finds out about all of that, she will not hesitate to hand over that information for money. At this moment, she doesn't know. All she tells Oscar is that she knows there's more to the story. They part ways in front of the Russell household. Mrs. Armstrong, at the same time, is coming out of the Van Ryn house and she sees them together. Now we see Agnes Van Ryn in her room. She looks so sad and expresses regret over how she reacted. Broke my heart. I think she's very vulnerable in this moment. The more we see into her heart and character, the more I know she's not a villain. There's a soft side to her. Life has just hardened her. I think she's been hurt many times. I think she's seen other people hurt. She likes being in society, being wealthy, but I don't necessarily think it's for all the reasons that other people like it. It's more the security of it. Because her and her sister were hung out to dry by her brother. She had to marry for money to save them. There's just something about her, and I'm not just saying that because I love Christine Baranski. I swear. I guess I just like how layered this character is. Let me know if you agree. Armstrong walks in, and there's obviously something on her mind. Agnes tells her to spill. Now, we don't hear what exactly she says, but we know it's about Oscar and Turner. Here's the thing. I don't think she actually knows about their situation. She thinks they're seeing one another in a romantic sense. Agnes freaks out. She is livid. This is her only child, her only son. He's not only dating a maid, I know that sounds awful, but he's not only dating a maid, he's dating Bertha Russell's lady's maid. He's not, but that's what she thinks. And to her, that is unacceptable. And that's going to be an interesting conversation because what is he going to say to her? Is he going to come clean and let her know what he's doing? Is she going to want in on it? Is she going to condemn it? Have no idea where that's headed. The episode once again ends with the Russells receiving bad news through a telegram. The detective or detectives, can't remember if it was one or more, that George Russell hired, they found the guy who used old parts. I think his name's Dixon. That's the good part of the news. The bad part is that this man is claiming he has solid evidence that George Russell gave the order to use old parts. That would destroy the Russells and this empire they're trying to build. This would be the nail in the coffin. For sure. This episode was a lot. Let me know down below what you thought. A lot of things to unpack, a lot of drama to discuss. Wow. If you enjoyed this video, Please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to hit that red button down below to subscribe and to become a member of my YouTube family. Also, click the bell to turn on your notifications. I will see you next week. Bye!